of you have heard this. How many people have read the book Getting to Maybe? Okay, you guys, you get to cheat on this exercise. And for those of you who haven't read the book, Getting to Maybe is all about social innovation, the dynamics of social innovation, much of which takes place in neighborhoods. And it's written by Brenda Zimmerman, Michael Quinn-Patton, and Francis Wesley. Two of the three of them are based out of Ontario. And it's a great book. It's in its 5th or 6th printing. It was printed in 2006. Super book. I think you can order it online, and I would really recommend playing with this resource. But let's begin by throwing you back into your tables and asking you a very simple riddle. What's the difference between baking a cake, sending a rocket to the moon, and raising a child?
The rocket is complex because there are a whole stage of steps that you have to go through, and in hindsight you could have known that some of those things, were steps if you had a disaster.
So a lot of steps in sending a rocket to the moon.
So it's really quite complicated.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, complicated here, but complex is raising a child. So, that's the one where, we can have 4 kids and they're all completely different.
Yeah.
And the things that we thought we might do with one won't work with another.
Yeah.
And even when we give them all the love in the world, they can go off and do horrendous things, or kids can rise out of amazingly difficult circumstances to become amazing people. So, there's just no rhyme or reason to that. We can't say in hindsight we could have known.
So you're so simple as baking a cake, complicated sending a rocket to the moon, and complex as raising kids because they're different.
Yeah.
In hindsight, you may not have even been able to do something different. It's a bit unpredictable.
Yeah.
A diagram that confirms that when you look at community issues or public issues even, you can understand them at least along 2 different dimensions. And this is a segue into the riddle that we just started with. And then one is the dimension of certainty and the other is the dimension of agreement. Now, who's seen this one before? About 4 or 5 people, okay. So the dimension of certainty on the bottom has close to far from certainty. And here's, I'm going to rattle this off pretty quickly. We are certain about something when we have the following 5 things in place. Number 1, we understand that there's a pattern out there that looks relatively consistent. We can see something going on, a behavior. Number 2, we are certain when we understand the causal dynamics, the causal patterns underlying that behavior. Right? Why? The why question. 3, we have certainty when we understand where the leverage points for making change on that issue are. We have certainty number 4 when we know the strategies to move those leverage points, and we have certainty when we have predictability about outcomes. Your table, I heard, was talking about predictability. So when we see the pattern, when we understand the causal dynamics, the leverage points for change, strategies to move it, and number 4, predictability of outcomes. That's all high certainty. When we have low certainty, I don't understand the behavior, I don't understand why it's going on. Crime rates, education, etc. It's too complex, it's crazy complex. Number 3, I don't know where the leverage points for making a difference are. I don't know the strategies, and heaven forbid I could tell you that I understand with predictability the outcomes that we'll get if we try stuff. That's low. Now, agreement is something a little bit different. Agreement refers to the extent to which the stakeholders who have to be involved in moving the needle on a community issue or a public policy issue are on the same page or not. When they're on the same page, they typically have the same values, the same interests, the same perspectives, and the same positions. They have alignment. When they're not on the same page, they may have different values, they may have different interests, institutional or cultural, they may have different perspectives, they may have different positions on things. That's lack of alignment. So this gives us actually 5 different kinds of issues, each which require a different kind of an approach. So, thus, getting back to the riddle, baking a cake, we could argue baking a cake is a simple issue. It's simple because there has been some kind of pattern or behavior that we understand. We know how to move the needle on it. And in fact, we've played with the recipe kind of approach for so long that we've turned it into a recipe. So much experimentation that we found the recipe, the blueprint. And if you follow this blueprint, if you follow this recipe, you are pretty well guaranteed to get an outcome. And that people, there's no issues around this in terms of the community. Everyone's on the same page. A little bit different than going to the moon, however, sending a rocket. This gets exactly what your table is talking about. When you have something where the stakeholders are on the same page, but we actually don't know how to get an outcome, that's complicated. But complicated issues are complicated in the sense that if you do your homework, if you bring in the right experts, you will find that answer. There is an answer. How to fix this watch. There's an answer to it. It's got lots of pieces. It's not a recipe, right? It's got a lot of pieces. But if you have expertise in watches or how to fix a car or send a rocket to the moon, you probably could do it if you do your homework. So this is really the place of knowledge, experimentation, and experts bringing them together to find the solution. And over time, you get the right people in the right room working long enough, they will find the answer because it is out there. Political issues are different issues. Political issues are not about how to get an outcome and certainty. We know everything there is to know about that. We can't get stakeholders on the same page. Now, political problems are not solved by expertise. I don't know about New Zealand, but we in Canada, if something's really difficult, we go research it. Whether it needs research or not, we're going to have a commission, a white paper, we're going to go study it together. Or we talk and we find out that we're not really on the same page, but there's some win-wins for us. Some you win, I win, and there's some area for compromise. Not everything, but we'll find something. Or finally, we're off the charts. We have conflict. And how do you solve conflict? Well, it goes beyond building trustful relationships. It's about power politics, right? It's about organizing. And there's lots of stuff in the history of humankind that have been solved that way. Look at human rights and the vote, the franchise to vote in the 20th century, right? It's about the other side over here. Chaotic. Chaotic situations, there's lots of ways to talk about them, but the one that makes sense for me is it's hard to find a pattern and stakeholders are fragmented and don't even have no ability to connect with each other. And the greatest example of chaos in the last while, well, you have one here in New Zealand, I'll speak to one that was a bit closer to home for us, was Haiti. Right, you had the earthquake, boom, there was no water in that city. It was chaos. No one knew how to get the water on. Right? Because all the systems had unraveled, they had imploded, and even the institutions stewarding that had imploded. You guys didn't have the same kind of aftermath. Chaotic issues are different. They require different kinds of leadership, and the leadership they require here is to create stability, look so you can begin to improve communication channels and start working outwards on the issue over time. And if you can, take advantage of the break to try out new innovative solutions that'll prevent that challenge in the future. So that's chaos and stability, and it's got a very hierarchical form of leadership, and we won't talk tons about that today, but it's a slightly different story. I'm going to go to the very end before I talk about complex. Complex issues are right smack in the middle, and they are complex for a couple of reasons. Number one, they are difficult to frame. It's even difficult to frame a complex issue. What is poverty? What is educational achievement? Right? What is ecological well-being? What is sustainability? Difficult to frame issues. One. Two, high uncertainty about everything there is to do about solving that issue. Causal dynamics, leverage points for change, strategy, predictability of outcomes, shifting all the time, don't know. Three, have a lot of stakeholders who have to be on the same page and often aren't, right? Different stakeholders like different preferences. Certain stakeholders don't even want a causal problem, don't even want to work on it, right? Tough to get stakeholders to the table. Number four, things keep moving on you. Right? Complex issues, damn it, they never stand still. They're always moving. And in fact, they're adaptive. They co-evolve. You intervene into a complex issue, it intervenes back at you. Right? So it's never staying the same. Number five has got tons of paradoxes and dilemmas. We'll talk about this after the break as well. In a complicated issue, there's an answer. How to fix this watch? In a complex issue, some of your solutions are full of paradoxes and dilemmas. There is no answer. So a paradox. Paradox is where two things that are seemingly contradictory can be true at the same time. We actually find that when we think about how to solve issues in our institutions, we are highly trained, we have protocols, we are funded, we think really well in simple, maybe complicated and political. And that's where all the light is. We're encouraged to think like that. We're encouraged to call issues simple, complicated, etc. Get some experts on it. Find the right recipe. Deal with the politics of it. When in fact, the car key to community change, self-refueling change processes, are on the dark side of the parking lot, and they're on the complex, on the edge of chaos. And that's where the answers are. And part of our challenge is to embrace things as complex.